What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Credit Lake, and today we're reading chapters 13 and 14 of Tomorrow, a Sinister fanfic by Bekka911. If you'd like to support the author or her works, go ahead and find the two links in the description that goes to the book and the author's Wattpad itself. If you'd like to recommend Wattpad Read Aloud books for the future, there's a Google form for that too. Quick trigger warning for anyone will be in the description below as well if you need it. I put in the description so it doesn't quote-unquote spoil it for the people who don't want it spoiled, but all those who are curious may go look. With that, here's chapter 13. Patton had named them, his voices. Why, he wasn't sure, but he knew they were a part of him, and he needed them. And so he named them Declan and Dominic. He didn't know why he'd chosen names that started with D, but he refused to believe that it was because of deceit. "You don't have to worry," Declan breathed in his left ear, his voice soothing and soft. "It's not because of deceit. You're okay, yeah? You have to feel bad, so bad." Dominic added lowly in his right, "Just push these icky feelings away, my love. You can make yourself feel better, see?" And wow! Wasn't that just grand? He was listening to voices in his head, choosing them over his very real, very good friends. Patton knew, in his heart, that what he was doing was wrong. He shouldn't be listening to these voices. He shouldn't be doing what they told him to do, but when he did, he just felt so much lighter. He didn't have to worry about feeling bad or being worn down by negative situations. He could just be happy. He needed Declan and Dominic. He needed them to breathe. He needed them to be happy. It would tear him apart if he had to shut them away. He needed their support. They understood him. Didn't the others? He needed them. "You poor, misguided fool." The words were low and cruel, slithering through the dark and swirling through Patton's head like fog. Deceit's laugh was mocking. "You're so far gone, you've given names and voices to your issues." Dominic snarled lowly in Patton's head. "They don't like to be called that," Patton said tightly, fighting to keep calm. "They're perfectly valid beings, okay?" Deceit raised an eyebrow. "Their voices," he said slowly, "in your head. You are 17 different kinds of crazy, Pat." "And you're 17 different kinds of irrelevant," Patton sneered, feeling that monstrous anger swell in him again. His veins burned, his skin itched. "Why are you here, Deceit?" Something flickered in Deceit's eyes, an indecision about something Patton simply couldn't understand. He seemed almost apprehensive, as if he couldn't predict how Patton would react. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe Patton was too wild and spontaneous at the moment. He certainly felt that way. He felt like a spinning top that had spun out of control. He was a hurricane. He would destroy everything he loved. "You must feel like you're drowning." Patton looked odd. Deceit said finally, voice devoid of anything mocking or teasing or terrible. He sounded sincere, worried. Patton nearly crawled out of his skin with unease. Deceit sounded almost nice, and the sheer wrongness of it grated at Patton's bones. "You've got to be feeling like you aren't in control of yourself, and that your emotions are beyond your grip." "Don't try and tell me how I'm feeling," Patton warned. Deceit narrowed his eyes. "See, this is what I mean. You're angry now, deflective, and easily irritated. You can't control it, can you? The aggression? Stop talking!" "It's those voices, Patton. They're causing you to implode. Why can't you see that you are destroying yourself?" Deceit's voice was desperate, and it was unlike him that Patton had an overwhelming, inexplicable urge to laugh and cry at the same time. Fine. You don't believe me. I don't blame you. Talk to Logan then. He'll explain it. You believe him. No, you don't, Declan promised, and Patton shivered. Ignore this liar. His words mean nothing to you, dearest. Patton shook his head impatiently. You wouldn't understand, he said, voice tinged with something hysteric. He was spinning out of control. His strings were cut, and he'd almost lost his grip of stability. Maybe he was going crazy. You're just a liar. You're trying to trick me, I know it. I am a liar, yes. I deceive people, yes. But Patton, you have to listen to me. If you keep going on like this, you're going to cripple something vital in Thomas. If you don't trust me, trust my will to protect my host. Thomas needs you, the old you. You have to start fighting back. He's hurting you, Dominic growled protectively. Ignore him, my sweet. You don't have to deal with the hurt he's causing. Give it to me, okay? I'll take care of it. Yeah, okay. Patton trusted his new friends to take care of him. They cared about him more than anyone else did. He knew that much. They didn't judge or try and change him. They were kind and gentle and soothing. Patton knew they meant well. They needed as much as they needed them. Look, Patton said to the seat, ignoring the disappointed look that settled on the snake's face. Leave me alone. I know I'm your favorite to torment, but please, I'm tired of it. The seat bowed his head. As you wish. With a soft sigh, he wrapped the shadows around him and vanished. Patton let out a heavy breath and let Declan and Dominic draw out the stinging pain in his chest. They weren't bad for him. They cared about him, and Patton trusted them. He needed them. Logan barely reacted to the presence in his room. He simply rested his chin on the clasped fingers that stared at the spotless white wall. What is it that you want to see it? He sighed. He didn't have time for this. Something was seriously wrong with Patton, but he couldn't help until he knew the extent of the issue. Logan. The seat's voice was uncharacteristically quiet. Listen, I know you don't trust me. I don't blame you. I don't like your little group of four, and Virgil and I aren't on the best terms, but I do care for our host, and the situation with Patton is getting out of hand. Thomas will start to feel the effects soon. You need to do something. Patton will listen to you. Logan rubbed his temple. I'm afraid Patton will listen to nobody at the moment. He's listening to the voices that he's hearing. Logan whipped his head around so he could stare at the seat. The snake shrugged. The signs are obvious if you know where to look. He trusts them implicitly. It's abusive. It's not hard to see. Logan let out a very, very long breath and took his glasses for a moment, rubbing his eyes hard enough to see little stars burst across the blackness. Thank you, he said finally, putting his glasses back on. That was the last piece of information I needed. I must speak to Virgil and Roman. This will be difficult. Deceit clicked his fingers, and the shadows around him writhed. Don't mistake this for kindness or for care, he said. I'm doing this for Thomas. Logan said nothing, and watched the snake disappear into the shadow. Patton stared at the roof, head cushioned by his pillow. He'd been about to go into the kitchen, but Dominic had protested, and Declan had urged him to lay down. You're tired, dearest, he cooed. Lay down. You're not really hungry right now. You just think you are. So here he was, lying on the bed. He should be up and doing things. He should be checking on the others. He was supposed to be doing things. Let yourself be lazy, Dominic said softly. You're always taking for granted, sweetling. They'll be fine without you for a while. You're allowed to take time for yourself. But I want to see them, Peta murmured. I want to apologize. I want to see Logan and Deceit, and you believe Deceit? They hissed in tandem, and Patton squeezed, his eyes closed. Sorry. Sleep, Patton, Declan whispered, voice suddenly loving and gentle again. Everything will be okay when you wake up, I promise. Patton could trust them, couldn't he? Chapter 14. Roman wondered where they'd failed. Because they had failed. They'd let Patton wither away, and they hadn't done anything until it was too late and Patton had retreated too far into himself to hear them anymore. Hades had taken Deceit to spring them into action. Deceit had been the problem in the start. Roman couldn't forgive himself, or the others, for simply ignoring what had clearly been in front of them. Now, Patton was suffering because of their blindness, their reluctance to push too far. Well, they should have pushed until Patton broke, because at least if they broke him their way, they could fix him their way as well. Roman. Virgil's voice was small and fragile, and Roman's anger dissolved. Of course, this moment wasn't about to placing blame or getting angry. It was time for discussion, and for them to offer the help that should have been available from the beginning. Roman, please. Logan and I can't do this on our own. We need you. Patton needs you. How are we supposed to, Verge? Roman wasn't one to give up, especially when it was so desperate to protect his friends, but he just couldn't see how. Patton was utterly dependent on those voices. Those two were his closest friends now. It wouldn't be as easy as simply muting what they couldn't hear. Logan hummed and adjusted his glasses. If I may, he began. We need to treat this as an abusive relationship. Patton trusts those two voices more than he trusts us. Therefore, we need to work with them while working against them. Logan, I hate to tell you this, but we can't hear the voices. Virgil sucked in a breath to try and calm himself down. Roman offered up his hand, knowing from endless hours of research that tackle actions were a good way to keep anxiety at bay. Virgil dove for it and gripped tightly enough to make Roman wince. Logan frowned, as if the thought hadn't occurred to him, except it must have been because he was Logan. He thought about everything in sight, every variable, and every limitation, and every problem. He wouldn't have just missed something so glaringly obvious, except that he maybe had. Zeus knew they'd all missed things that were obvious. Patton hadn't been acting right for weeks. He'd been too harsh with Virgil. He'd been not Patton, and they'd done nothing. They just let him slip away. Maybe Virgil was right. Maybe Roman needed to step in. Regardless, the royal said tiredly, rubbing the edge of his nose with his free hand, Patton is our friend, and we must do something. An intervention of some kind will at least allow us to gauge where Patton's thoughts are. If we allow him to continue down this path, Tammin will suffer greatly. Deceit was not lying about that. Virgil sneered. He's the problem, he hissed slowly, and his grip on Roman's hand tightened. If he hadn't shown up, we wouldn't be having this problem. Calm down, Roman murmured quietly. Think about Thomas. Indeed, their host must be quite conflicted currently. With Patton the way he was, Thomas was essentially going without his morality and emotions. And on top of that, the clashing of Virgil, Logan, and Roman himself, as well as the lack of schedule, Thomas must be having a hard time. Roman could only hope that with Patton's absence, their host had gone vacant rather than cruel. They could only count on Deceit to keep him that way. If one of the dark sides heard about this... Roman shivered. Bad things would happen. What if we appear to want to welcome the voices? Logan suggested suddenly, frowning down at the table. If we feign welcome, then Patton may be more comfortable translating what they're saying. Once we figured out what they're whispering to him, we may be able to counter. Roman looked away. The thought of deceiving Patton made his skin itch. He hated that they had to go to such lengths. He had become hypocrites to save their own friend. Lying? Were they really any better than deceit if they pulled this off? He steeled his nerve. All right, he said softly, because yes, they were better than deceit. They're going to help Patton, not hurt anyone else. And besides, Roman was really good at acting. First thing, then, Virgil said, leaning forward slightly. There was a strange light in his eyes, almost a longing. It was almost as if he was missing something or someone. We need to learn their names. Names? Logan repeated. One of the first things Patton would have done is name them. Virgil met their gazes steadily, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. It clicked in Princey's mind. Of course, Virgil was drawing from his own experiences with Derek. We need to treat these voices as people that Patton consider friends. Directly attacking them will only make Patton defensive. We'll lose him easily. I could take point in the questioning if you'd like. I feel as though I've had the most experience with this. It was true. Even with Roman's encounter with Dylan, Virgil had spent more time familiarizing himself with Derek. They'd been close. Logan, of course, hadn't ever had his own side. The side was too practical, too logical. He could rationalize anything, hence Virgil was the best choice. Roman squeezed Virgil's hand when he noticed the flash of panic in his friend's eyes. He'll be okay. Patton will be okay. We're going to do something. We're behind you. Logan slid his hand across the table, and Virgil grabbed onto it. Okay, he breathed, clearly soothed by the contact with both of them. All right, walk me through the plan so I know what to ask. Roman let Logan do the talking and focused on centering himself around the soft point of contact between him and Virgil. Well, wasn't this just a mess? Thank you all so much for listening. If you'd like to watch the next episode, subscribe. Remember to support that author with the description links, Thank you so much for watching, and much like me trying to freaking read words at 4 in the morning, do your best.